2, 1.
Thanks for joining us today as I build my level 2 certification rocket here. You may have noticed from some of our other videos that we do have a creative department with my wife and kids, and they had a very specific style in mind for this with very large fins. So the fins were so large that they don't fit in our laser cutter. So we went with this finger joint style here. I adjusted for the kerf of the laser to make sure that they were very tight. And then of course applied glue here. I'll later come back and I'll apply glue on each side just because I'm overly paranoid. I hadn't necessarily seen this technique before on high-powered rocket, so I was a little concerned. We'll jump to the spoiler. It held up fine. We're going to jump to doing the motor mount in the centering ring. So this is the 4 centering ring. So we're going to put our attachment on there. Off camera, I did have to take the grinder to these washers to make sure they didn't stick out, neither the airframe side or the motor mount side. So one side has a nice sweeping curve that's convex. The other side has a nice little curve that's concave. So we're going to line those up and tighten this guy down. And then we'll switch to the other end where the motor adapter will mount. My first high power rocket had these lock adapters. So I've kind of just leaned into that. So we want to make sure that all of our existing hardware will interoperate with this, and then we can switch those out for smaller and medium sized motors. So we're going to go ahead and measure several times, try and lay it out so that it's far enough away from our fin slots on the bottom centering ring. We'll come back in with the calipers just to make sure, and make sure that those spacings look good. Then with that done, we'll go ahead and drill them out. So we'll use the existing to size the bit right, and then we'll go ahead and put those holes in. You will notice, basically since COVID, when there was a shortage of plywood, I've just consistently been having trouble getting plywood that doesn't have these delaminations unless you're incredibly careful. So given that this wasn't a sort of an aesthetic piece that we'll even see, I just blew right through it. We'll come back and sand that down, and then we'll put those T-nuts in. Here you can see all 3 fins assembled. You know, I was still paranoid of these finger joints, so I wanted to give them all a little quick flexion test and see how they held up. If it looked like they were going to start to separate there, I might have come back and add a reinforcement. I was kind of thinking of something like a little pod that would just go down the middle, a couple inches on both sides. I'm glad we didn't have to go that route though. And out of an abundance of caution, we'll go ahead and mark a line down the motor mount tube here, just to make sure when we do put all the centering rings on, there's no torsion and everything's actually nicely lined up straight. Once we do that, we'll come here and we'll mark where we're going to cut it. And then we'll go around and round and round with the X-Acto knife, slowly cutting it through. Once we have the motor mount tube cut down to size, we're going to go ahead and add the centering rings to the fins. Again, I did want these to be super snug, so I kept all the settings so that they weren't easy to put in and out. So I wanted to be able to use a wide array of motors, so I went with the 54mm tube here. It's also super stout and beefy. Given these long fins, you know, I figured if there were any odd forces, that would help dissipate it into the airframe over a larger area. With that done, we're going to go ahead and sight down it and see if everything is lined up well. It seems pretty straight, but of course we have the line on the tube to do that last check. I'm also going to leave all these annoying squeaky sounds in just to give a sense of how snug the overall setup was. And it did take some effort there and some encouragement on the aft end to get it to set, but everything looks pretty well lined up. And with that, it's everybody's favorite time, glue fillet montage. So on the right side was where we have the recovery harness anchor bolt on the front. I did go back and do that. That's why there's 4 videos, even though there's only 3 sides. I felt I was a little stingy on the epoxy on the first round. So we just went back and made sure that was nice and bomber. So now we'll just let you enjoy fast-moving fillets of glue. All right, that's just about enough of that. Now we're going to jump forward. We're going to go ahead and add the 1010 rail button on the bottom before we block that off and make it almost impossible. The other thing we're going to see here is I've already slotted the airframe. So I do that by making 2 cuts down the side and then straightening it out with a file. and coming back and making sure that they fit over the fins. I don't want to have to make some complicated clamping jig, and I'm paranoid given the length of these fins that the airframe might not lay completely flat. So what I'm going to do is just add some super glue there and then come and press it in and have that set, really just to tack it in place. So now that we feel a little more comfortable that those might stay in place, we will clamp the end because it's not too hard to do. We'll go in and open up little spots where we'll be able to get one of these transfer syringes in, and then we're just going to douse it with wood glue from various angles. We'll spare you all the footage here, but we were pretty thorough in this. We did it right side up, upside down, and I'm pretty confident that there's solid attachment underneath. Since we're on the outside of the rocket now, to try and keep the airframe tidy, we'll go ahead and mask off the fins here and prepare for the external fillets of glue. We did use a slow set epoxy on both the inside and outside here. So with that all prepped, we're going to go ahead and come in and apply liberal amounts of the epoxy to the airframe here. We're going to let that settle in, get that nice curve, but we're going to come back here in a second and remove the tape before it's fully cured so that we get nice clean lines. Now we just have to repeat that process for the other sets. We won't bore you with that, but I do want to show there were a couple spots where there was just a little bit too much of a gap between the airframe and the fin. So we went in and just applied little pieces of paper. This isn't really structural itself. We just need a little dam to keep the epoxy in place. So we're just going to laminate that in and then come back and apply the fillet per usual. And hopefully the glue will stay on top and have a nice firm attachment. With that, we're zeroing in. You can see the Avionics base sled above. There's another video showing that. But for now, we're just going to cut down the forward section of airframe to size. We did want to be able to use this for dual deployment. For the Cert flight, we're just going to use the motor and then one backup charge on the bottom. So for now, we'll just attach it with a shock cord just in case it does separate. But then we'll come back in with tape and make it really unlikely that nose cone's going to come out. But first, we're going to line up the AV bay. We'll draw some marriage lines. We'll drill holes here. We'll screw through these just to make sure they stay firmly in place. And then we'll be ready to start doing some ground tests and figuring out the charge size. And that will take us a few attempts to get right. And in one of those attempts, we'll rupture the side of the airframe. So there's a short video showing the damage and what we wanted to do to fix that. As for finishing, we got some automotive vinyl, and then we cut some stars using a Cricut, and we put all that down. We put several layers on top of clear coat with some glitter coats mixed in for a little extra pizzazz. And then we'll be ready to add the flag-themed parachute and shoot for the stars. Thanks for watching. This is A Little Loud Labs.